Hello and welcome to the webinar. Today, we've got a great event, a great topic lined up for you here today. The topic is connecting clouds, simplifying solutions for seamless SAP deployment. On the webinar today, you'll learn how Rackspace and VMware are simplifying solutions, connecting clouds to help clients navigate the changes in the SAP landscape. You'll discover the challenges being faced by organizations running SAP and how Rackspace and VMware are here to help you overcome these challenges. But first, we've got a few things that we need to cover. And after that, I'll be introducing you to today's expert panelists. Before we get started, I should mention my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm glad to be serving as the host and moderator on the webinar today. As always, we want these to be educational events. We encourage your questions in the questions pane of the audience console. We know how tough it can be out there in the world of enterprise technology, and the goal of this event is to help you to overcome your challenges, specifically related to running SAP in the enterprise. And so we even have a best question prize to maybe help shake some questions loose. I'll talk about that more here in just a moment. But first, I want to call your attention there to the handouts tab. You've got four different handouts. Special links hand-selected by today's expert presenters, starting off with the SAP Cloud Readiness Assessment, followed by a case study on how the Zachary Corporation boosts IT agility. And then there's two links there on how SAP HANA on VMware vSphere is best run, best practices, reference architecture. Make sure that you check out those resources in the handouts tab. At the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card prize. If you're watching this recorded or on demand, of course, that drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found right there in the handouts tab of your audience console. And then, as I mentioned today, we also have a special additional Amazon $50 gift card for the best question prize winner. That means you have to ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing. And we'll be looking through all the questions that came in during the event, post-event, and selecting the best question prize winner to send out that gift card. Of course, you must still meet the prize terms and conditions. All right. So with that housekeeping information out of the way, I'm excited now to welcome today's expert presenters. Welcome to Kevin Carroll. He's a Senior Director for Product at Rackspace. We also have Judy Jamison, who is a Director for ERP Professional Services at Rackspace, and Mark Terry, who is a SAP Global Alliance Solution Architect at VMware. Kevin, Judy, and Mark, it's great to have you on the event today. Let's start off with a little bit of background on yourselves. I'm curious, I know the audience is as well. What's your background with SAP? Starting with you, Kevin.
Sure, thanks, David. So my background's probably a little bit different than Judy and Mark's. I've got about a 20-plus year career in the ERP space, but I know maybe taboo for this audience, but I started off in the Oracle world, and I was an Oracle ERP guy across many aspects of working for service providers and global SIs, doing consulting, working in industry as a resource supporting ERP systems in real life production, and then eventually moved into more of pre-sales and product management and leadership roles from there. So about 8 years ago, I was working for an MSP that decided to make a couple of strategic acquisitions in the SAP space. So we acquired a basis administration company, and we acquired another company that really focused on application managed services for functional support and development. And since then, I've been working for the past 8 years in various roles, having responsibility for both product and pre-sales over SAP.
Excellent, thank you. And what about you, Judy?
Thanks, David. So my experience with SAP dates back to 1999, my first implementation of an SAP system for a printing company. I believe it was a 4.0B system, which is quite ancient now. And we weren't even talking about cloud. The system lived in a back dusty room somewhere and everybody could see the hardware, and that's the way it worked back then. And honestly, our biggest problem at that time was Y2K, which seems like a million years ago now. But so I've supported SAP systems ever since, worked in consulting, worked on every version of SAP from 4.0B through S/4HANA, helped customers customize the solution to meet their businesses, have helped customers migrate their system, do upgrades to the latest and greatest versions, and now I lead a team of folks who do that. So thanks. That's me.
Perfect. Yeah. And what about you, Mark?
Hey, thanks, David. Hello, everyone. So I come from almost 26, 28 years approaching SAP from more of a back end and infrastructure perspective. Started out at Oracle back in the mid 90s, and then moved successfully to infrastructure companies. Most recently, before VMware, I was at Dell. Really EMC, then VC, and then Dell for 11 years as an SAP, pre-sales infrastructure specialist. And so never been functional, never been basis. I remember when I didn't know what a central instance was. I thought it related to an Oracle instance. But, since then I've been helping customers, understand really best practices around how you store SAP, how you protect it, how you back it up, what's your system copy strategy, high availability, disaster recovery, always coming from that infrastructure and that virtualization perspective.
Excellent. Well, wow, we've got tons of SAP experience here on the event today. So, let's kick it off by talking about the state of SAP out there in the enterprise. What's going on? I want to first start with you, Kevin, but before we do that, we've got a poll for the audience, and we're going to go on this event through a series of polls, and I'll share the results with each one of you out there in the audience so you can see how you stack up with your peers on the event. And the poll question that's on the screen is, how have you deployed your SAP system today? And there's a number of choices there. I'm not going to read them all, but at the bottom it says other. So if one of the choices there does not represent you and your environment, then drop your deployment model into the questions pane, and we will share it as well with the audience. We want to hear from you. We know all the polls aren't perfect for every environment, but hopefully they represent most. So I'll let everyone respond to that poll. And Kevin, what are you seeing out there in the world of SAP? What's the state of SAP?
Yeah, so when I think about what's going on in the SAP world, first I think about what seems like an infinite number of truly unique implementations across all of the deployments of SAP worldwide. And I know in my years of doing this, I've never seen two that looked exactly the same. So you got to think some of these systems have been running for, upwards of 30 years and, in various forms, of course. And so you have those customers, and then really the gamut right through customers who are in the process of implementing SAP today. And depending on where those customers kind of entered that journey, there's, very, very different approach and very different decisions that they face, right? So that's the next thing I think about is for these customers, what are these big decisions that a lot of these customers need to make in the very near term around adopting the HANA database, if they haven't already, adopting S/4HANA, and really how to transform and modernize their applications to properly enable them in today's cloud first and cloud enabled world. So, ultimately these are big decisions, and any of them are going to lead to change, risk, often expense, but it's also going to provide a good pathway for future growth, right? So, as you heard a little bit of, our teams have been providing SAP services for over 20 years. We understand kind of all the ins and outs of how customers have gotten their systems to the state that they're in, and nobody's perfect, right? So no judgment there. And these systems grow like such far-reaching roots into the organization that it's really hard to navigate what to do next, right? So when we engage with these customers, that's why this first poll question is so important. We really want to understand all of the ins and outs of the current state and get that solid understanding of where we're starting from before we, go down that road of guiding what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got lots of responses coming in. Thank you to everyone who's responded. Maybe let's just get a few more. And I want to share the results of this poll, and you can see where everyone else here is in the audience. Looks like the majority here said on-premises and virtualized. There were none that are on-premises bare metal. 9% managed private cloud, 9% managed private cloud bare metal, virtual mixed, and 27% public cloud, 18% some other deployment model. If you're one of those folks who indicated other, drop it in the questions pane. I want to ask you, Kevin, what do you think about the results?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of as expected. I mean, I did expect to see some sort of a balance between on-premise, sort of a managed private cloud, if you add up the two nines there, and the public cloud, right? So that's pretty apparent. I think it also goes to show that the advantages of virtualizing in today's environment, are pretty apparent, right? I'm actually a little surprised to see that there's no on-prem bare metal mix, but I guess that's a good sign in a number of ways. Historically, some of the virtualization companies tended to shy away from that when we got into large database sizes, but even that's becoming less common these days as companies like VMware have evolved their products. On the public cloud side, as expected, I mean, obviously over the years, lots of buzz about public cloud and, really being the place to be. And, I think in many cases, that can be true. I think public cloud drives questions of, how much transformation and modernization is a company really undergoing as they adopt the cloud to take advantage of what the cloud can offer. Versus, just a traditional lift and shift and taking what was sitting in an on-premises data center where, like Judy said, people like to be able to go and touch the servers, and taking that and just moving it and operating it the exact same way on the public cloud. And some of those customers haven't seen the same advantages and have, even without transforming the app, like your approach to managing SAP in the cloud, approach to monitoring, approach to FinOps and containing cost management can definitely be a big adjustment for customers when they go there. So, it's about what I expected for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, and thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to just tack on to what Kevin mentioned. Just you're right. From these results, we've seen for years. We estimate right now that 70% of all SAP customers globally run virtualized and on VMware in some form or fashion. There's different virtualization technologies out there, but really run on VMware in some form or fashion. So I think this reflects that. I think that customers see, a lot of the agility and flexibility benefits when you run that way. But there's, for example, there's a question out there. If you're new to the cloud with few resources, what's the best way to start that journey? As Kevin mentioned earlier, we really want to understand where you're starting from today, what your current state is. But then, we often talk about helping customers work through looking at cloud not as a location, but really as an operating model, and really taking advantage, like Kevin said, even if you're, talking about classic platform to client server applications, which SAP mostly is today, adopting some of those cloud characteristics, no matter where you run, your SAP application.
So Mark, what about those systems that run in those dusty old back rooms? How do you handle a cloud operation with those?
Right. Well, that's a great question, Judy. Again, that approach is typically to look at, the benefits that you want to get out of running cloud as an operating model. And, what we typically do is assess those current systems, those older legacy systems, understanding what the upgrade paths are, but also, really looking at injecting virtualization. So if those workloads are not virtualized, if those databases on the back end, those HANA databases, those traditional disk-based databases are not already running, virtualized on VMware to really, start a plan and a process to virtualize those. And that's where we can really take advantage of more of cloud as an operating model. So you can have on-demand self-service catalogs, so systems can be deployed very rapidly. So you have, workload elasticity, turning workloads up and down. You can do these types of things, in VMware. And the move to S/4HANA is going to require that type of agility and iterative testing. So you want to be able to stand systems up very rapidly and take them down rapidly, make some changes and do your testing again.
Yeah, I know earlier, Mark, you mentioned something about thinking about the cloud operating model and the operating model as or thinking about the cloud as an operating model and not a destination, and referencing any particular platform. And I think that's a very great. I'm definitely going to steal that from you.
Yeah. Thanks. We've used that quite a bit.
Great points all around. All right. Well, we learned where companies are currently running SAP. So now let's move on and let's talk about deployment models a little bit for the future. And specifically, this poll question for everyone out there in the audience is on the screen now. It says, where will you run your SAP system in the future, in the next 2 to 5 years? What are your plans here? Do you plan to keep it on premises? Maybe a managed private cloud? Is it going to go to the public cloud, hybrid scenario, or some other option? And if so, drop it there in the questions box. And I'll start with you again, Kevin. What direction are you seeing companies move regarding deployment models?
Yeah, so it varies a bit for sure, and it depends on where customers are in their destination. In their journey and what their destination is. I think we already talked a little bit about some of the great new technology that the hyperscaler clouds can offer, especially if they're approached in combination with a real transformation effort to adopt that true cloud operating model versus just a lift and shift and kind of business as usual. But, for a lot of companies, that just really isn't in the cards. It's been a tough couple of years. The world's been kind of a roller coaster in general. The economic climate right now is kind of uncertain, unfortunately. And, there's many ways in which a managed private cloud offering can provide a lot of those benefits of moving, to the cloud, but offer platform choice and operating models that are more similar to that of what many customers are used to running on premises or in their current operating model. So that really opens the door for migration options with opportunity for a lot less risk, less change to the organization. Can provide less change to those operating models that we keep talking about, and often greater cost control, especially if it really is a pretty static traditional SAP environment. Anything to add there, Mark?
Yeah, I think what we are seeing and what we've been seeing for the past 2 to 3 years are organizations that have had these cloud first initiatives and really looking at cloud as more of a location. They may have migrated a lot of their SAP workloads to the cloud. We're seeing repatriation of those workloads, either back to an on-prem data center or back to a managed hosted service provider such as Rackspace. And it really gets into issues around security, compliance, performance, right? There's all sorts of GDPR, PCI compliance, regulations that companies globally have to adhere to. And so, where that data is located is important. You're also seeing, especially the way that data moves in and out of an SAP environment, all the integrations from SAP and non-SAP applications. You're seeing, high ingress and egress costs as well. And so I think that as customers see that, I think what we are seeing in the poll data here, is that customers are really looking at a hybrid or a multi-cloud approach, for all their applications, including SAP. And then the question becomes, do I have a consistent, foundation, infrastructure as a platform underneath my applications, so that I do have that kind of workload mobility. I can move workloads out to the cloud and out to a managed hosting provider, such as Rackspace, or I can run workloads on-prem and still retain the same standard operating procedures, still protect my applications in the same way: disaster recovery, backup and recovery, high availability. I maintain all that because I've got this kind of consistent infrastructure that I'm running my applications on, no matter where they're running.
Great points all around, Mark and Kevin. Let me share the results here, and let's get your feedback on this. Looks like 33% said hybrid, 23% said public cloud, 14% managed private, 4% on-prem. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, again, I would say no real surprises here. I think on premises, there's definitely still companies out there running data centers, and often, in some cases, there's very good reasons for doing so. But I do know most companies don't see that as a core competency of being in the data center business, and are trying to exit there. So, it's not surprising that's in that direction. Pure public cloud, pure managed private cloud, those are about where I'd expect them. Obviously, the public cloud has a lot of advantages in certain areas where it's appropriate for those workloads. But hybrid is really, from our perspective as Rackspace, it's great to see, right? We truly believe that we live in a multi-cloud world, and there is no one cloud that's going to be the solution for all needs for all customers. So that's my initial take about where I'd expect.
I'd like to add to that. For example, and you see these articles come out periodically. Most recently, right? I read an article about the German SAP user group, so similar to ASUG, but the DSAG, where they are really pushing SAP to make sure that all of the innovation and enhancements in S/4HANA that are exist today and that are coming, make sure that those enhancements are available for customers running in the cloud as well as on-prem. And again, I think it reflects this drive and the impetus of customers to really deploy SAP data and applications where appropriate, and oftentimes that is going to be in a managed hosted environment or on-prem or in the cloud. You have a combination of those two, and again, I think it's driven by these reasons that customers have around, again, performance, compliance, security, making sure applications and data are deployed, in the most appropriate manner, but still maintaining this flexible and agile operating model.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I'm sure you do too, but we get asked that question all the time. Where's the best place to run my SAP? And there really isn't one answer. And that's why I truly feel that Rackspace is uniquely positioned where we operate with our deep history in private cloud and the business we've built around public cloud over the past several years. We can help guide customers to understand the pros and cons of each and consider each customer's unique implementation and everything that surrounds it, and kind of evaluating that decision. And a lot of these decisions today are being driven, and kind of the decision to go and even move the applications at all are being driven by HANA and the S/4HANA timelines and deadlines, right? So that opens up a whole another branch of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great segue really to our next topic, which is migration timeline. Obviously there's a whole lot of changes expected in the world of SAP in the next few years. The survey results here, poll results have indicated that. And so I want to get everyone's take here in the audience. The poll question on the screen is, when is your organization planning to start the transition to SAP S/4HANA? And the results there, are self-evident. I'm not going to read them off, but I do want to go now to Judy and ask you, Judy, what's your take on this migration timeline for the future?
So Kevin mentioned all the decisions around SAP. It's not just where to deploy it, but also when to upgrade, when to migrate to S/4HANA. I'm sure those of you on the call are well aware of the rapidly approaching deadlines. 2027 is a big year for SAP. That's really when they're encouraging all customers to migrate to S/4HANA. You might get a little extended maintenance there if you're willing to pay for it for a few years, but SAP's extended that deadline multiple times. I think we've been talking about it for the better part of 10 years now, but most experts believe that they're not going to extend it any further. So now is really the time to start planning. They have made a commitment to support S/4HANA through 2040, by when I hope to be retired, and maybe some of you will be too. So we won't have to worry about whatever the next version is. But if you're running SAP now and you're not on S4, you really need to start that plan. As of last year, it was about 25% of customers had made that move already, but 25% of customers hadn't even started the planning yet, which means a lot of customers are going to be either migrating or planning a migration in the next several years. So we're going to encourage our customers to do so and to really start that planning activity now. And in fact, this year, I think we've seen a real uptick from our Rackspace customers with interest in making plans, building a roadmap, figuring out when the right time is going to be. And I expect that to continue that interest to continue to grow a lot over the next couple of years. I've read articles about a wave coming. There's a wave coming, and will it be a tsunami? There's definitely going to be customers trying to plan and get migrated, and that's going to mean, limited resources potentially. The other thing to consider is, you need business buy-in to make this change, and that's not always easy. I'm sure most of the folks on this call know that it takes a lot to get the business to sign up for a big upgrade, one that requires a lot of time from the business to help fine-tune business processes or adopt to new functionality in the system. And also that iterative testing that Mark mentioned earlier, that's a real thing, and it takes a long time. And many customers may forget how to test their system. I know we like to think everybody has good test plans and they know how to test all the functionality, but time has shown and experience has shown that most customers don't have well-documented test scripts and testing plans, and they may have to recreate that to some degree. So the earlier you start planning, the better you're going to be. And it should be an interesting few years.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for pointing out especially the deadlines that are associated with this. And with that, let me share the results of this poll. And Judy, what do you think? What do you tell those folks out there, the high number of folks who haven't
not
started
planned yet?
Planning
Yeah, I see that. 58% not planned yet. So that's even above, some of the numbers we've seen published. I think it resonates with what we've seen at Rackspace so far. I think we have had some hesitancy to make the change and figure out, the right time for the business based on seasonality, economic conditions, all of those things that factor into taking on a big project like that. So I do see there's maybe 5%, one answer who said they've already done it. So congratulations. But, this does, really reinforce what we've seen at Rackspace so far, that lack of planning needs to convert into a roadmap of some kind. For sure. So it's interesting. Next year, a couple for the next year. That's good. Next 2 years, that makes sense. Those customers who haven't planned really need to get started, though, for sure. 58%.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That's huge.
Are you surprised, Mark?
Yeah, no. Well, I am surprised that we don't have more that have already completed the move to S/4HANA. But again, the numbers and how they scale is not surprising. And, just another anecdotal piece of data, VMware IT, our own IT organization, we're fully running on SAP and on HANA. We started our migration from legacy ERP to HANA back in 2015, and our first release of HANA and SAP took about 9 months. And to that point, we executed over 1,700 test cases within that time. So you're talking about rapid migration to HANA, and again, because of that flexibility, that agility, the ability to stand systems up and tear them down rapidly, and do that testing, 1,700 test cases. So it is important as you get into this dynamic phase of moving, to S/4HANA, and as that deadline date is approaching. And so, yeah, just very important.
And,
what year was that, Mark? 2017?
Between 2015, August of 2015 to what, 9 months later, what is that, March or so of 2016. Really? That was our 9-month kind of migration to HANA.
Great. I was just going to say, I know the question is specific to S/4HANA, but we have seen a lot of customers who aren't quite ready to commit to the S/4HANA migration, do a migration where they're going maybe from on-premise off to either a private cloud or a public cloud environment, running the traditional ECC suite with the HANA database as the underlying platform. So checking off one of the boxes and setting themselves up for an easier migration in the future to S/4HANA without making that full leap and commitment into S/4HANA at this time. Just another consideration.
Yeah, great point. Great points all around. Let's move on now and talk about challenges. We talked about some of the challenges around deployment and these deadlines that are coming up, but specifically, there's a lot to do around SAP, and I'm sure IT organizations out there are really feeling squeezed in different ways. And so, Judy, I want to ask you what your take is on challenges while the audience responds to this poll, which is, what are the biggest challenges your organization is facing in the SAP landscape? Judy, what challenges are you seeing?
Yeah, I think we've seen our customers have challenges with expertise, certainly in knowing, the pros and cons, like Kevin mentioned, of where to deploy their SAP system, what's going to be the best suited environment for them. Not all organizations are well versed in the cloud options, private cloud options, all the different options that are out there. And, we see customers come to us quite frequently asking for recommendations as far as that is concerned. They also maybe have a lack of not just expertise, but capacity within their own internal teams to allow them to focus on projects, especially big projects like a migration to S/4HANA. So they may need additional help while they pursue that. So looking for talent to support the day-to-day while they move on and explore an S/4HANA migration, for example.
Yeah, companies are going to need a lot of help, a lot of expertise, and I'm sure that's a big problem. Mark, what about you?
I think what we see is just that idea of the unknown and what comes next. So as you're looking to make this migration to S/4HANA, right, your situation may change through mergers and acquisitions, through bringing on new innovations that SAP is introducing within the S/4HANA platform. And so, the question is, how do I handle those changes and integrate them in seamlessly without impacting my business, without risking the business? So, again, I think this idea of being able to, run, pretty much ubiquitously with that same kind of infrastructure platform, really, no matter where these workloads are running, and the ability, again, to test rapidly, I think is key.
Absolutely. Yeah, to be successful, you got to be able to test and do it over and over again. Let me share the results of this poll about challenges. Looks like 36% said the biggest challenge they're facing is around decreased budget and spending freezes, followed by 21% end of life for SAP ERP products. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Like we've mentioned, the end of life is a huge challenge. And again, customers are looking to address that very rapidly. You see that introducing risk to the business due to system changes. Again, minimizing risk, being on that standardized platform, can help with that. And then, right, decreased budgets and spending freezes. A lot of that can come in the form of operational, OpEx spend. And so the more we can standardize and then, standardize on platforms, on processes, and then inject automation as much as we can, right? We haven't talked a lot about automation, but once you get on a platform that is flexible, that is agile, you can start to really automate with the various tools that are out there. Ansible, Terraform, a lot of VMware tools, used to be called vRealize, now Aria, right? These tools to automate kind of standard operations that you're going to repeat over and over again, drive risk and kind of errors out of those operations and get them done quickly, I think can go a long way to, addressing some of those decreased budgets.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk about how can Rackspace and VMware help with these challenges. Judy, why don't we start off with you? We talked a lot about all these different challenges. The audience responded. Rackspace, I know, has helped many companies. Why don't you tell us about how Rackspace might be able to help?
Sure. So first off, I think one of our handouts and one of the links that you'll provide, or that's in the handout section, is a link to our cloud readiness assessment, which is an assessment we can do to help you determine your readiness to move to the cloud, wherever that may be, whatever location it is, right, Mark? We can help assess your system to see where you stand, help make recommendations, and help you to build that roadmap to, figure out where you want to deploy your systems going forward. We can also help you determine when the best time to move to S4 is alongside of that. And I encourage you to have a look at that. In addition, I mentioned, some of the constraints around, personnel and capacity among the team. We can also provide services to help augment your team, to help, run the day-to-day operations, either through our basis managed services or SAP support services to help you run your existing system while you make plans for the future. So we really can help you in either way.
Excellent. And Mark, how can VMware help with some of these challenges?
Well, definitely, helping customers, optimize, again, how they rapidly deploy their SAP workloads, how they protect them, high availability, disaster recovery. What options are there to address those needs, and what's best for the customer given their current situation. Their processes around system copy. So we can help customers really, optimize deploying SAP on a virtualized platform, and really do that to best practices, as well as to, make sure that they comply with all supportability and certification rules and guidelines that SAP has, especially when it comes to HANA. Right, lots of infrastructure rules in terms of how you deploy HANA on any infrastructure, bare metal or virtualized, and that's where we can really help. And we have services, right, where we can help customers actually, do that upfront assessment, perform kind of that best practice design, and then deploy, SAP on VMware, no matter where they're deploying, right? Work with the Rackspace team when deploying at Rackspace, But again, in that hybrid scenario on-prem, help customers, in all those different areas.
Yeah, I think, another interesting point there is that, while we certainly love to help customers modernize and transform and take advantage of all the bells and whistles of a cloud operating model, if I think about that last question and the number of people who said they're facing decreasing budgets and that sort of thing, if we know that up front and we know, align on goals, we can help to work towards a solution that's going to help maximize your current investment and introduce the least amount of change and risk, so that we can get you on a path where you remain supported, but you aren't introducing unnecessary change into the environment as well. So multiple paths and options that we can help with, including, and I forgot to mention this earlier, we do operate our own private clouds, obviously, and help customers in the public cloud as well. But we help customers in their on-prem environments as well. So we have resources that can come in and remotely support, manage, and provide expertise around customers' on-prem deployments as well. So lots of ways we can help to answer the question on the slide.
Excellent. And I love how we've talked about, all the challenges, and there's numerous challenges around SAP. And then we've got some awesome solutions from Rackspace and VMware here to help, really, no matter what your scenario is. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into questions from the audience. If you have a question for our expert panelists here, now is the time to get it in. Don't forget, we even have a best question prize on the event today. So if you're not quite sure if the question you have on your mind is a good one or not, go ahead and ask away. I'm going to go ahead and start with this one I see here. This one I think is for you, Kevin. They want to know, how do I think you talked about this earlier. Maybe the top question you get most recently is, how do I determine what's the best place to run my SAP workloads?
Yeah, and I would be a rich man if I had an answer to that question that I could apply across the board to every customer. I really wish there was one. It's going to be a different answer for every customer, and I think the best way to make that decision is to get a real solid understanding of the current state. And when I say that, it doesn't really just mean what are the CPUs and what kind of box is your current SAP running on, right? It's all of your up and downstream systems. It's where you're doing your reporting. It's your data sovereignty. It's your security, and how do we integrate a platform that hosts SAP into the rest of the security framework of the organization. There's just many questions. We have some customers where, I'm not saying it is, but, if we were pushing customers to AWS, we have customers that just don't want to work with AWS or put anything on AWS because maybe they compete with AWS or Amazon in some way, right? So there's lots of different reasons why customers will choose one cloud over the other. And that's really why we love to get down into the weeds with our customers, understand everything that's going on upstream and downstream within the SAP system, and external factors like, budgets and investment, and what are the challenges that you're facing, and what sort of support resources and teams you have available to you. So
smart. I like that.
If anyone has the answer, please let me know.
But it's smart to do that analysis ahead of time and look at all the factors, internal and external. Very comprehensive approach. Mark, what's the best way, they're wanting to know here, what's the best way to run SAP on VMware?
Well, it's really, again, to understand
with
Rackspace. That's right. Go to Rackspace first. Managed hosted environment, you're going to run a lot of risk out of the environment. But it's really to understand what your requirements are, and make sure that we're within bounds of supporting, say, HANA, the HANA database on VMware, which today is up to 12 terabytes in a single virtual machine. Scale out up to 48 terabytes if you have analytical workloads. But then once we understand what those requirements are, what those growth requirements are, to then deploy, the best way to run SAP on VMware is to adhere to best practices. And we've got some links that we're providing to our HANA on VMware best practice guide, as well as maybe what I think is a more valuable link to start with, that SAP on VMware wiki link, right? That is an SAP wiki that we at VMware maintain. And, we discuss all aspects and what our current support stance is for all aspects of SAP on VMware, NetWeaver, HANA, et cetera, running on hyper-converged infrastructure. All of that is going to come into play.
Excellent. And I should point out to the audience, there's some great resources there in the handouts tab that Mark provided on running SAP on VMware vSphere as well, the best practices and the reference architecture. I want to make sure you don't forget about those. And then let's see, here's a good one for you, Judy. They want to know, can you tell us about a company that's run SAP on Rackspace with VMware?
Yes, I can. So a good example, we actually have one in the handouts as well, a case study for you to peruse after the fact if you would like to, for Zachary Corporation. This was a complex environment, over 50 servers, everything from CRM to SAP ERP, that we migrated to Rackspace private cloud hosting on VMware. So it's a very comprehensive case study explaining the project. I won't go into too much detail because you can read it yourself, but that's a great example of us, working with a customer to find the right place for them. They came to us asking, where should we, what do we do? And we worked with them to come up with the right solution. And that ended up being a Rackspace private cloud on VMware. So great example.
Yeah, awesome. And it's great to know that Rackspace and VMware have done this, so successfully with numerous companies before, in the past. I really appreciate everyone's questions. We've got a lot of great questions coming in, but I think it's time to wrap up the event here. Last question. I think this one's for you, Kevin. Tell us about the cloud readiness assessment. What should folks do to get started with that?
Yeah, so there is some contact information about ways to reach out within the SAP Cloud Discovery Assessment handout that we've provided. There is a link to our SAP section of our website that has some contact information and a way to reach out directly, as well as a phone number there that you can reach out to. I'd also say, I won't speak on behalf of my peers, but I'm on LinkedIn, Kevin Carroll, Rackspace. Feel free to reach out, send me a message. I'd love to connect, and we'll set you up with the right people to help you out.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I know the audience has as well. There's so many challenges around SAP, but we've got some great solutions here from Rackspace and VMware. Special thanks to our panel of experts, Kevin, Mark, and Judy. It's been great having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Appreciate it.
And of course, thank you to Rackspace and VMware for supporting the event today. Don't forget about the handouts tab. You've got links there to the SAP Cloud Readiness Assessment, the case study about Zachary Corporation, and the best practices to run SAP on VMware vSphere. And of course, visit Rackspace and VMware.com for additional information. And with that, it's time to wrap up the event. Thank you to our panelists. And I will now announce the winner of our Amazon $250 gift card prize. This is going to Stephen Petit from California. Congratulations, Stephen Petit from California. We'll reach out to you, and we'll also reach out to our best question prize winner. I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that you found some great solutions for your SAP challenges. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.